Alright, we are done for the moment with the ProLinea 450. I made a post on the vintage computer forums, which you should check out if you never have, because it is an awesome place for this kind of stuff. But I made a post on the vintage computer forums asking if anyone would sell me a 16-bit IDE controller that I could change the I/O port address to something other than 0x170 or 0x1F0. I think they are I think those are the default IDE ports. Anyway, a guy responded, and hopefully I will have a card and be able to finish this soon-ish. So in the meantime, let's look at something else. Well, now what is this thing? Could it be a diskless TRS-80 Model 3 or 4? Oh, no, it's a TRS-80 data terminal. DT-1. Ooh. So this is just a serial terminal. They were meant to be connected to Tandy Model 16 running Xenix. It was a Unix operating system made by Microsoft. It was a very popular variant of Unix in the 80s, probably the most popular. It was eventually sold to the Santa Cruz operation and turned into SCO Unix, which you've probably heard of. But serial terminals are cool because you can generally connect them to any old Unix box with a serial port and make them useful. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to try to hook this one up to the DP-8, which will be sweet. We just need to make a cable. But before we do that, I want to look inside of this thing and make sure that nothing is obviously getting ready to make me sad, as old computers sometimes do. So, yeah, let's see if we've got enough room here to disassemble it. It's going to take a good 3 feet. It's going to be tight, but we can do it. Yeah. I have never before disassembled a TRS-80. Let us consult the official service manual. Disassembly instructions: 1. Turn the DT-1 upside down on your work area. 2. Remove the 6 screws from the bottom. Not 5 screws, nor 7 screws, but 6. Rotate the DT-1 right side up. You must hold the top and bottom section together during this operation. Leave room to the left for the top to rest. Lift off the top section and lay it on its side to the left of the bottom section. The unit may be operated in this position for test purposes. Now, let's do it. The camera cannot satisfactorily capture the magnificence of this beast. It's huge. I mean, huge. This isn't any shitty little VT-220 here. This is a genuine grade A boat anchor, and it is beautiful. My baby. Alright, hopefully you can actually see the thing from way up there. Hi up there. I hope you can still actually hear me. This thing's pretty dirty. We're going to want to do some cleaning too. There's some Scotch tape from 1978. But before we disassemble it, let's power it up and look at it a bit. This thing does actually work, which surprises me. The power switch is underneath of the right-hand side, just like a TRS-80 Model 3, which I think it shares a case with, or maybe it shares a case with the Model 4. They're both very similar, other than the color. But this was made before the Model 4, so if it does share a case with the Model 4, perhaps it would be more accurate to say that the Model 4 shares a case with the DT-1. Alright, let's see if the magic smoke comes out. The CRT is warming up and it has given us a cursor. Control Shift Enter should take us to the setup screen. The contrast and brightness controls are back here. Here's our brightness, or contrast I should say. Here's our brightness. The text on the screen is very crisp. It makes me think that perhaps this unit was not used very much. Looks very good. Pleases me. Now, what the hell is all of this stuff, though, you may ask? Let me see if I can zoom you in here. We can move around and change them like so. Now, you may be wondering what they all mean. Well, fortuitously, we have the manuals in the book, and we can look at the manual and see what everything is. So these are all of the settings that you would find in a normal on a normal serial terminal. I'm looking for a local echo. If we turn on local echo, then we'll be able to type on it and actually see stuff before we manage to attach it to an actual computer. I don't see any setting for local echo. So TC1 and TC0 here determine the terminating character. Now here's an interesting thing. These are just 2 bits. You have to set like a binary number in 2 of these, a number between 0 and 3 inclusive. And EM0 and EM1 here, those select the terminal emulation mode. And this contraption can emulate 4, not just 1, not just 2, not just 3, but 4 different ancient antediluvian terminals, such as the Televideo 910, the Lear-Siegler ADM5, the ADDS-25, as well as the Hazeltine 1410. Fancy. The rest of the settings here after that are just for setting up the serial settings. Now, the 4BR settings are a 4-bit binary number for setting the baud rate, and this thing can go anywhere from 75 baud all the way up to 19.2K, which is pretty fast for something of this vintage. I'm kind of surprised. I figured it would probably top out at 9600. It'll be I'm curious to see if 19.2 will actually work reliably, because this thing doesn't have a UART in it either. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, and then we've got duplex select, cursor select, a bunch of other stuff that we don't need to worry about. So anyway, we'll mess with this when we actually hook it to a server machine of some sort. And then we'll get more into that. Alright, so here's the first sign of trouble. According to the owner's manual, if we press Escape V, we should be able to enter a self-test mode that will show a bunch of characters on the screen, and that doesn't seem to be working at all. So we may have some keyboard problems here. Let me power cycle the thing, just in case I screwed something up. Caps lock is on. It should be a capital V. Control Escape V. No. I don't know. I guess we'll find out when we crack it open. I'm going to have to make a loopback plug for this, I think, so that we can get local echo. Well, the keyboard has to be working, because I can hit Control Shift Enter and get into the setup thing here. So I'm not sure why we can't run the self-test. Oh well. we'll mess around with that later, I guess. Let's open it up. Well, first let's look at the ports, and then we'll open it up and see if anything is obviously wrong, like capacitors getting ready to explode or whatever. Although it seems to be working fine. I mean, I've got this oscilloscope from the mid-50s over here that also works fine, so I guess some capacitors are made of sterner stuff than others. Okay, so all of the ports are on the bottom of the machine, which is kind of a pain. A normal D-sub connector shell isn't going to fit in there right, so I guess I'm going to have to make something without one that just plugs in there. What a pain. But up here you can see the power switch that we were talking about earlier. The contrast knobs are down here, but who cares about all of that. This pin header here is actually a parallel printer port. You can echo the incoming serial data to a parallel printer or a serial printer, which is what this port here is. And this one here is the actual host serial port output. Alright, well, let's try to disassemble the thing. First, let's unplug it. That would probably be a good idea, wouldn't it? Since it's got a built-in power supply. 6 screws in the bottom, they say. I see 8 screws in the bottom. I wonder which ones are supposed to come out and which ones are not. Well, here's our power supply. It has a metal shroud over it, which is good, I suppose. Logic board down here. We can see there's a bodge wire right there. I'm going to have to download the errata for this thing and see if there are any service bulletins that need to be applied to it and check all of that stuff. Here's the CRT and the analog board, and as you can see, this big space up here is just about completely empty. That's where all the disk drives would go if it were a TRS-80 Model 3 or 4. And you can even see here on this shroud that goes over the power supply, it's got these threaded spots in it where presumably the disk drive bracket would mount. So that's interesting. Here's a sticker that's fallen off. I have to clean that up and stick it back on wherever it's supposed to go. Let's turn this to the side a little more and zoom in on some of these video section capacitors and see if there's anything bulging. Perhaps a light would help. Well, all of that stuff looks pretty good. The funk that you can see underneath of those capacitors, I am 99% sure that that's just glue that was used during assembly. I don't think that is electrolyte, but it might be worth checking that anyway. Lots of controls there for adjusting the picture. Everything is, of course, exceptionally dirty. Fascinating. Now, we'll have to do a little more disassembly to look at the rest of this. It's the money shot. Oh, I missed a screw. There's 6 of them. Spoiled the money shot. Jeez. Alright, now the money shot. There she is, boys. Holy shit, there's a ROM in there that doesn't have a piece of tape over it. That must be what that sticker was that fell off. Yeah, that came off of the ROM, I'll bet. Boy, we don't want the light to get to that. Shit. Alright, we got the ROM window covered up with a piece of electrical tape. Well, that could have been bad if that ROM had been facing up where light could have hit it and erased it. It's hard to tell how long that sticker's been off of there. Jeez. I'll have to put that ROM in my programmer and try to read it. It might be interesting to put that up on the web for people to get a hold of if they ever need it. It's time for me to go to bed, so we will examine this logic board later, tomorrow. And there are some interesting things about this logic board that I think we will both find very interesting. The choice of CPU in this terminal is interesting for a multitude of reasons, and I have a Zenith Z19 terminal that is being shipped to me right now that we will also do this same treatment to, and it will be interesting to examine the circuit board in and see just how different they are. I mean, two totally different design philosophies between these two terminals that look externally very, very similar. It's utterly fascinating. Anyway, interesting stuff coming up. Thanks for watching. Next time we will dive into this bad boy.